Okay, guys, so this is on page 38 in Module 5, and this is what we talked about today, and I feel like I kind of went through things pretty fast for you, so I just wanted to give you guys a chance just to see it kind of in video format. So in this case, we're asked to use the information to write a function in factored form, and then sketch a graph of each function and label the key points, which include the vertex, x, and y-intercepts. So when we looked at factored form, it's of this format. So it's a times x minus 1, r1, times x minus r2. So in this case, your r1 is x-intercept number 1, and r2 is the x-intercept number 2. So in this situation, we're trying to draw a parabola that opens upward and has zeros at x equals 2 and x equals 4. Well, zeros, remember we talked about our fancy word for x-intercepts. So, in this case, I know so far that my x-intercept number 1 is 2, and my x-intercept number 2 is 4. So my format so far is x minus 2, and then x minus 4. That's the format of my parabola. So, in this case, I can plot two x-intercepts, one at 2, 0, and the other one at 4, 0. Okay? Alright, so in this other case, we've talked about the x-intercepts. Now we just got to talk about my parabola opening upward. So what does that mean? That means that it's talking about the direction of my parabola. And this a value deals with the direction of my parabola. If a is negative, my parabola will open downward, which means it's going to be going like that. If my parabola is opening upward, that means it's going like this. Well, in this problem, it's talking about how my parabola is opening upward. So we're dealing with this piece of information right here. Okay? So what I have to do is I have to choose an a value that's positive, and it can be anything I want it to be. I can choose an a value of 15 if I wanted to. So why not choose that? So what I'm going to do is I already know that my factored form is going to be x minus 2, x minus 4. So now I'm going to plug 15 in place of a. So right now we got 15, x minus 2, x minus 4. Okay? All right. So I still I've identified my x-intercepts. X-intercept, x-intercept. I gotta find my vertex and my y-intercept. So if you guys remember, we've talked about the idea that the axis of symmetry is in the middle of 2 points. Well, we have 2 points in my graph. I have an x value of 2 and an x value of 4. So my axis of symmetry is going to be right down the middle of those two. So if I add those two values, my axis of symmetry is going to be 3. So on my graph, guys, I'm just going to draw my axis of symmetry. That's my axis of symmetry. So what do I know about my axis of symmetry? I know that my vertex is on my axis of symmetry. So I'm going to plug 3 into the equation that I came up with to find out what my vertex is. So my equation so far is f of x equals 15 times x minus 2 times x minus 4. So I'm going to plug 3 into this equation. So I'm going to do 15 times 3 minus 2 times 3 minus 4 to find my vertex. I know my vertex's order pair is going to be 3, comma, something. So 15 times 1 times negative 1. So in this case, it's going to be 15 times negative 1. So it's going to be negative 15. So my vertex is going to be at 3, negative 15. So what I'm going to do is just plot a random point. And I'm going to call this my vertex, which is 3, negative 15. So I plotted my vertex at 3, negative 15. Okay. All right. So I know my vertex now. Now, I just got to find out what my y-intercept is. If I wanted to find my y-intercept, I know that it's going to be on my y-axis, and my y-axis has an x value of 0. So I'm going to plug 0 into my equation to find out what my y-intercept is. So I'm going to take 15 times 0 minus 2 times 0 minus 4. So I got 15 times negative 2 times negative 4, so it's 15 times 8, which is 120. So my y-intercept is going to be 0, 120. And I'm just going to just randomly plot that point here. I'll just say that that's my y-intercept. It's 0, 120. And my parabola will look like this. This is just an eyeballing, just a sketch of it. That's a sketch of my parabola. Okay? All right, so I'm just going to kind of go through another example. If you guys want to pause this one and just try it again, that's totally fine. In this case, we're dealing with a downward parabola. It has an x-intercept of -3 and 1. So factored form, again, is this format. So in this case, I'm going to plug -3 in place of R1, and I'm going to plug 1 in place of R2. So I have x minus -3, x minus 1. So it's x plus 3, x minus 1. So I have a times x plus 3, x minus 1. In this case, we're dealing with a parabola that opens downward. So that means that I'm going to be using a negative a value. So in this case, I'm going to choose like -6. Why not? -6. So my parabola is going to be f of x equals -6 times x plus 3, x minus 1. I'm going to plot my x-intercepts right now. So I have one at -3, -1, -2, -3, and then my other one's at 1. Okay. All right, so after that, we want to try to find our axis of symmetry. Remember, the axis of symmetry is in the middle of whatever our x-intercepts are. So we're going to take -3 plus 1 over 2. So in this case, our axis of symmetry is going to be -2 over 2. So that's going to be -1. So I'm going to draw my axis of symmetry on my graph. My axis of symmetry is going to be at x equals -1, which is right here. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important. Histogram says so. But it's also because the vertex is on the axis of symmetry. Okay. So, in this case, I'm going to plug x equals -1 into my equation. F of x equals -6 times x plus 3, x minus 1. I'm going to plug -1 in place of x so that I can find what my vertex is. So I'm going to do f of -1. So -6 times -1 plus 3, -1 minus 1. So I get -6 times 2 times -2. And I think I get it to be positive 24. So your vertex is going to be at -1, positive 24. So I'm just going to kind of sketch that and approximate that right here at, this is my vertex, and it's going to be, my vertex is right here, -1, 24. Oh boy, went off the page. -124 is my vertex. Okay, well then we just got to find out what our y-intercept is. So we're going to plug 0 in place of x. So I'm going to do -6 times 0 plus 3, 0 minus 1. So -6 times 3 times -1 is positive 18. So your y-intercept is 0, 18. I'm going to kind of sketch that on my graph. Y-intercept 0, 18. Sketch that. And this is what my graph would look like. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful. And we will talk about it more on Monday.